Welcome, everybody. Bill Donahue, Discerning Truths. We're here talking about Jesus. Jesus over here. So we do it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday and Wednesday, I'm in the book of Matthew. We're in chapter 14 today. And today, since it's Wednesday, is American prayer. So I want to be done on time. And we're going to get into this pretty quickly. But one of the problems in Scripture, especially for the first few people that are new to studying it, there's a bunch of people named Herod in it, a bunch of Marys. There's a couple of Jameses, and none of those Jameses are actually named James. They're Jacob, but it's we translate them as James. And it's trying to keep track of who's who, and there's even a couple of Judases. And you go, okay, what the heck's going on? So we're going to kind of go in on chapter 14 because we have another Herod, and his sister-in-law and wife, who's also named Herodias, based on Herod. It's like George Foreman named all his kids George, and his daughter's Georgina to give his name along. And it's kind of the same kind of idea with these Herods. So that's part of what's going to happen today, and then we're going to move through here and see what's happening. But I want to jump right into the study. And if you're new here, I don't usually interact with the chat until after the study is done. I'm not trying to be rude. Thank you all for coming. Have your chats in the go ahead and talk among yourself in the chat. I'll be over there. I get distracted by it. It's not that, but it takes my mind off what I'm doing. So I just move on through the study. So with that, I'm suggesting we're going to get into this study immediately. And then I'll come back out and we'll deal with the chat later in the stream. So Matthew 4, right, verses 1 to 5 say, Matthew 14, verses 1 to 5. At that time, Herod, the tetrarch, heard about the fame of Jesus. And he said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist. He has been raised from the dead. That is why these miraculous powers are all at work in him. For Herod had seized John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife." Okay, this is Philip Herod. Okay, it's Philip's wife, because John had been saying to him, "It's not lawful for you to have her." And though he wanted to put him to death, he feared the people because they held him to be a prophet. Okay, so now you got this Herod, who's called the Herod the Tetrarch here. It's actually Herod Antipas. This is not the Herod that killed the babies when Jesus was born. This is one of his sons, okay? And, you got numerous rulers. Herod the Great, that's who would have been involved in the starting of the Herodian dynasty, right? You get a bunch of major players. Now, Herod Antipas, he's the Tetrarch of Galilee, not of Jerusalem, up in Galilee. Now, Herod's daughter, Herodias, is a daughter by a different woman. Okay, so Herod Antipas and Herodias are half-brother and sister. She is also half-sister through a different mother with her first husband, Herod Philip. Okay? You see what's going on? So Herod Philip first married his half-sister through a different mother. And then, for whatever reason, she leaves him and goes to Herod Antipas and remarries over there. This is a little messed up family. Now, why are the Herods running Jerusalem? The Herods aren't even Jews. They practice Judaism, okay? But they're Edomites, okay? What we would call Jordanians today. Sometimes they'll use the Greek version of Edomites in your translation. It'll say Idumean with an I, okay? Now, the Edomites were forced to adopt the law of Moses around 125 BC. After being conquered by a Hasmonean Jewish king, okay, called John Hyrcanus the first. And the territory of the Edomites, then known as Idumea with the I. So Edom, Idumea, Jordan, we're all talking about the same thing, okay? And the Hasmoneans are a dynasty of Jews, okay? So this John Hyrcanus, he conquers them and then forces them to practice Judaism. So these are all Jewish converts. And then Rome comes along and takes one of those Jewish converts and puts them in charge of Jews. So this is not really, Jews are not happy about this. But Idumea, it's just a Greek version of the name Edomite. Okay? And the Edomites aren't descended through Isaac. They're through, remember Jacob and Esau, they struggle in the womb, and, Esau is the brother, and Jacob puts his hand out and comes out, and he puts his hand out, they put a string around his hand to identify him. He goes back in the womb. Esau's born first, and then Jacob comes out. Well, Jacob's name means heel catcher. But so Esau is legitimately the firstborn, but because Jacob's hand went out first, there's a claim to being firstborn. There's a disputed firstborn. Later, Esau is going to sell his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of porridge because he's hungry. And he gets it. So this fight between Esau and Jacob, between the Edomites and what will be the descendants of Isaac, through Jacob and Isaac, are going to be at war throughout the centuries. And they're still at war today. Regularly at war today. And but when they got conquered, they got given a choice. We'll either exile you out of your own country, or you can worship and follow Judaism. And they chose to follow Judaism, most of them, and that's how you get the Idumeans here and the Edomites in the Bible, in the Herods. So you have this issue in Jewish law. It's called a Levirate marriage. So under Jewish law, in Leviticus 18:16 and 20:21, a man is forbidden from marrying his brother's wife. There's a typo there. Okay, the T is capitalized, not the H, right? The exception to this rule is called a Levirate marriage. Sorry, my phone's texting, Okay. So if the brother dies and he has no children, then under Deuteronomy 25:5-10, his brother is supposed to take on his wife and raise up children in his brother's name. So Herod Antipas, supposedly following the Jewish religion, right? They're supposed to be Jews following the Jewish religion. He married his brother's, Philip's wife, but his brother's still alive. Okay? So John is calling him out on this and going, I don't know what kind of sick stuff you got going on in the palace here, but this is not okay, what you're doing. This is against the Jewish law, and you can't do this. You gotta separate. And all this is going on, and Herod Antipas and Herodias, they don't want to hear this. So they end up going after John, and we're going to go through this whole thing about how they had him killed, right? But now Herod Antipas is fearing that because he killed John, who's an innocent man, that God has raised John from the dead and empowered Jesus, and that's how Jesus is doing all these miracles, okay? And so he's got to figure out, he's built in his own panic, that he has brought God's judgment upon himself by killing John the Baptist. And to just give you a little idea of what's going on in the family of Herod, right? You got Herod the Great up on the top, right? He tried to kill Jesus when he's a baby. He's the massacre of the innocents, right? Innocence. And then you got four wives named here. One of them's Cleopatra. That's not the famous Cleopatra. That's Cleopatra in Egypt's kind of like Herod in here, a name that goes on a lot. Okay, so he's got a wife Miriam, and we're not sure. We don't know the name of the children he had with Miriam. We know some of the grandchildren with through Miriam, right? But we don't know the actual fathers. And then you got Mithras, who is Herod Antipas's mom, and Herod Archelaus. And then you got Miriam the second, who is Herod Philip's mother, and Cleopatra, who is Philip the Tetrarch, his mother. Okay? Now, Herod Antipas, right, gets together with Herodias, right? And Herodias is the wife of there. But what this chart is not showing you is Herodias is also a daughter of Herod the Great. Okay? This is one twisted little family. Now, Salome is the daughter of Herodias and Herod Philip. And she does the sexy dance, the dance of the seven veils or whatever, for Herod Antipas, and convinces him to kill John the Baptist. Right? See this messed up thing? And then you got King Herod Agrippa II, right? And Bernice and stuff down there. This is going to be like in the book of Acts. And then you got Antonius Phyllis, okay? Another one down through Herod Agrippa, who is the guy that's going to keep Paul in prison. And Agrippa also imprisons Peter and James, and he executes James, the son of Zebedee. So this whole twisted family of the Herods, they're in charge of Jerusalem and in the area, Galilee or Judea, depends on which brothers control in which area. They're in most of the New Testament. Fun time, right? So 6-12 says, but when Herod's birthday, this is Herod Antipas' birthday, came, the daughter of Herodias, that's Salome, right, danced before the company and pleased Herod, so that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. Prompted by her mother, Herodias, Salome asked, give me the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And the king was sorry because of his oath and his guest, and he commanded it to be given. Even though he regretted giving her this power, he's going to honor his word. He sent and had John beheaded in the prison, and the head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother, and the disciples came and took the body and buried it, and they went and told Jesus. So most of us have heard the story about the daughter of Herodias, Salome, and but the mother's pretty simple herself. Not only did she leave one brother for another, she is now basically asking her daughter Salome to sexually excite her current husband through provocative dance so they can trick Herod Antipas into agreeing to kill John the Baptist. Now, all that detail about this being a sexy dance and all that stuff is not in this passage. A lot of that comes out of church history and tradition. But this is, like there's no mention that she danced the dance of the seven veils or any stuff in here. But that's what is believed to have happened. And 13 and 14 says, now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from the boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. And when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, and he healed their sick. Now the Bible paints a consistent picture of Jesus. He's a man who's deeply moved by death, disease, suffering. We aren't told why that when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from to a desolate place. But I think it seems like a reasonable assumption that he went to spend time alone praying with the Father. He just got horrible news, the loss of his cousin, the murder of his cousin. You have this pain. The man that baptized you, What do you want to do? Jesus' first act is he says, I'm going to go spend time with my God. I'm going to sit there with the Father and pray and let God comfort me. And you see this pattern in Jesus and Matthew 14 and Mark 1 and Mark 6, and Luke 5 and 9 and John 6. Every time there's a big problem, there's stress, there's whatever, what's Jesus do? He moves away by himself and goes prays with the Father. I think we can learn from that. We need to spend some time alone praying with the Father and let him influence us. Because you know what happens when we pray? We don't change the Father. He changes us. He realigns us to his will. And after spending some time with the Father, Jesus is ready to return to the work of the ministry. And what you see is he sees the crowd that's gathered and he had compassion on them and he healed their sick. And normally when I'm feeling burnout and I realize I haven't been spending enough time with God in prayer, you rarely talk to anybody in ministry that is burned out because they've been praying too much. They're burned out because they're running church meetings and business meetings and they're doing counseling and they're doing all this stuff. They're not burned out because they're praying too much. And I don't pray publicly often. Part of me, But maybe I should pray publicly more often. But it's spending time with God in private that restores my strength. And I'm suggesting maybe it will help you and restore your strength. If you're at the point of burnout, you're at the point where you think, I can't go on, I can't take any more evil. We just watched I didn't change the slide, did I? Yeah. We just watched some horrible events in the last couple weeks, A reminder of 9/11, the murder of a Ukrainian girl, the assassination. It's like assaulting your brains and your emotion and your spirit. And we can get caught up in that. And the answer to that is spend time with God in prayer. Let him calm your soul. Let him restore your peace. And that's what Jesus did. In 15-21 says, now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go into the villages and buy food for themselves. And Jesus said, they need not go away. You give them something to eat. Okay? And they said to him, we have only 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, bring them here. And he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to his disciples, and his disciples gave them to the crowd, and they all ate and were satisfied. And then they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and children. I've seen all kinds of estimates on what this really was, how many people are here. But if there's 5,000 men, and you assume most of them are married and many have children, what are you looking at? 10, 15, 20,000 people here that all got fed with the 2 fish and 5 loaves, and then you have all these leftovers. This is clearly, and this is a very familiar Sunday school story about Jesus feeding the 5,000 men besides the women. And then all 4 Gospels include this event. So it must have been, not been there, but been with 2 E's. It must have been a very important story, or God wouldn't have inspired all 4 Gospel writers to write it. And there's a similar story about feeding 4,000 with 7 fish and a few loaves in Matthew 15 and Mark 8. So what's the special significance of these miracles? I mean, you have this happening twice. One of them is recorded in all 4 Gospels, and the other event of the mass feeding is recorded in 2 Gospels. Why? Now, Yahweh, the Old Testament God, the God of the Old Testament, presents himself not only as the creator and lawgiver and judge and redeemer, but he's also the provider, right? Jehovah Jireh or Yahweh Yireh. Okay, whether you pronounce it as a J with a Y, it's you're trying to pronounce the four consonants, either YHVH or YHWH, as a word without knowing the vowels. So they took the vowel points from Adonai and stuck it in there and created the word Jehovah, Yahovah, and then some people made it Yahweh. So we don't know how to pronounce the name of God, but you're either using the J sound, which didn't exist in that century. There was no J available, or you see like in Greek, it's an I for the J, and in English it comes on much later. So the J sound's added, and we don't know how to pronounce it. It's probably closer to the Y, or maybe a Y and a J combination, right? But Jehovah Jireh comes from Genesis 22:14, where the root word Jireh signifies to provide or foresee. And it was given to Abraham to the place where God provided the ram for the sacrifice. God will provide. God provided the ram for the sacrifice. And by providing for the needs of the people, Jesus is not only declaring himself to be Jehovah Jireh, the God that provides, right? But because he's making an allusion to a word that originated in the story where God provided the ram instead of Isaac for the sacrifice, it's actually alluding to the fact that he's going to be the sacrifice. The only begotten Son is going to be the sacrifice. These types of allusions are all through the Bible. They're not direct quotes. They're not paraphrases of the Bible. They're allusions. And you have to know where the word came from. What's he saying? Go back and look up the original context. What's the original context this is being used in? What event is he alluding to in these actions? And when you do it with those miracles, you see Jesus is clearly declaring himself to be God. Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. The God who provides the sacrifice. Right? Now, 22 to 27, it says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side when he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was a long way from land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." So we're still seeing this pattern of Jesus. He regularly sets time aside to pray with the Father. He just fed 5,000 men plus all the women and children. And first he makes the disciples go away. He sends the crowd away. And then what's he do? He goes alone to pray with God. And after Jesus is done praying, he wanted to rejoin his disciples. Now the Sea of Galilee covers about 41,000 acres. Walking around it's going to take some time. It is about 13 miles wide, so without any storm, even crossing it in a boat's going to take some time, But walking on the sea, Jesus reaches them in the fourth watch of the night. So that's between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So we don't know what time he started walking, but he gets there between 3 and 6 a.m. He might have started walking at 10 p.m. We don't know. He might have started walking at midnight. But he's been walking not on a flat sea, but a sea that is beating him up, the boat, right? We don't know how long Jesus prayed before he walked, but we get the impression he was there praying at least until evening. Now, Jesus had the power. He could have just spoken and calmed the seas. He could have immediately transported himself across the sea in a blink of an eye, right? But he chose to walk on the raging sea. And there might be a lesson in that for us. God doesn't always calm the raging sea or make our paths easy, but he makes a way, right? But can you imagine the disciples? These guys are exhausted. It's a late. They've been trying to get across the sea for the whole night. It's between 3 and 6 in the morning. They're still out there paddling like crazy, trying to get across the sea. They look out, and there's somebody walking on the water. No wonder they thought it was a ghost. But the answer from God to our fears is often the same. Do not be afraid. Now, you'll hear often people say it's in the Bible 365 times. I challenge you to find it. It's in there about 100 times or something close to that, but it's not 365. This is one of those Christian urban myths, right? They're out there. But when God repeats something 100 plus times, that ought to be sufficient for us to think it's important. Be not afraid. Do not fear. Don't fear those who can kill the body, but fear him who kills your body and your soul. Right? He's out there. Now, 28 to 33, it says, when Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water to came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink. He cried out, Lord, save me. And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got in the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. Now, we often criticize Peter for sinking, but Peter got out of the boat, and none of the other disciples did. Peter walked on water, and none of those other disciples did. Neither have you or I. But the question is, would we get out of the boat? Will we step out in faith for that? But oftentimes when we do, even when we finally step out in faith and do stuff, what is being pictured here is the wind, the distractions in this world take our eyes off of Jesus, and we start to sink. Had Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he'd have walked right to him. But Peter still had little faith. When he got out of the boat, he had little faith when he walked on the water, and he had little faith when he sank. What changed is his focus. He took his eyes off of Jesus. And we do the same thing. We take our eyes off of Jesus and focus on the things in this world, and we start to sink. When you take your eyes off of what you're supposed to be doing in ministry and get busy with the business of ministry, you sink spiritually. And I'm just telling you, I'm seeing this pattern through here. Jesus describes Peter as little faith, but we just shown that he demonstrated more faith than the other people in the boat. And I don't know, no Christian I have ever known has walked on water. Okay? So I'm thinking, if he's of little faith, what am I? Minute faith? I'm tiny faith. We all have little faith. We all experience doubt. But despite that small amount of faith and the nagging doubt, when Jesus saved Peter and caused the wind to cease, they found enough faith to worship Jesus as the Son of God. Not as a good and wise teacher, not as John the Baptist reincarnated, not as somebody, a great prophet, or as the Son of God. The same God that provided the sacrifice in the Old Testament. Remember, we were just there. The same God who told Abraham to kill his own son. The same God that did all those things in the Old Testament. Jesus is the Son of that God. Not a different God. Not a different God in the Old Testament. Same God. In verses 34 to 36, it says, and when they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent around to all that in the region and brought to him all who were sick and implored him that they might only touch the fringe of his garment. And as many touched it were made well. What's this fringe of his garment? We've seen this with the woman of the issue of blood too. Touching, if I only touch the fringe of his garment, the hem of his garment, what's going on? The fringe of his garment is because tizit and their tassels, and they're commanded in the Torah for Israelite garments as a reminder of God. And this is from Numbers 15, 38 and 39. Speak to the people of Israel and tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a cord of blue on the tassels of each corner. And such tassel shall be a tassel for you, and look at and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and to do them, not follow after your own heart and your own eyes, which you are inclined to whore after. This is from Deuteronomy 22:12, right? As a cross-reference. It's in Numbers. What I just read you is in Numbers 15, 38, and 39, but it's also in Deuteronomy 22:12. So these tassels, these fringes on the garment, they're to remind you to do the will of the Lord. And a common interpretation of this connects the healings in Malachi 4:2. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. You shall go out leaping like calves from the stall. Little poetic language here about calves leaping and all that stuff. The Son, not S-O-N, S-U-N, Son of Righteousness. But the word translated as wings here is kind of in Hebrew, also means the corners of the edges. It's another word for these tassels. An early Christian interpreter saw Jesus as the Son of Righteousness, and the wings that bring healing here as being the tassels on his garment, right? And if this echoed parallels we see in the mantle of Elijah in 2 Kings 2:8, or Paul's cloths in Acts 19:12, emphasizing divine authority through garments. The synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, seem to intentionally evoke Malachi 4:2, portraying Jesus' fringes as the source of that, or those tassels as the source of that. But it symbolizes his role as the prophesied healer. Okay? What they're doing is they're again alluding back to Old Testament passages and saying, this is the guy you've been waiting for. This is the healer who was promised. He's the one spoken of by Malachi. And this is amazing. It's not that the what do you call it? Tassels had some superpower to them. They did not. The tassels were there as a sign to obey the will of God, right? And to keep God's word in your heart. They're a sign for them. What the tassels did was to connect Jesus to that promised healer. And so you have them touching that tassel and being healed. It is, this stuff's just amazing to me. So if you're new here, what I do at this point in time, because I got finished in Matthew 14, is I'm going to put on a song. I'm going to try to read the chat in the different platforms. I'll be back here in a minute. I'll see if I can answer any comments or questions in the chat. And then we are going to, I'll talk to you about my schedule, what's happening, and we'll try to get out of here on time. Okay?
worship you alone. You will come to take me home.
You are all I ever need. Jesus, you have set me free. I will worship you alone. You will come to take me home. You are all I ever
You are all I
need.
need.
Jesus, you have set me
You set me free.
I will worship you
I will
alone.
worship you.
You will come to take me home.
I've fallen on my knees. I will bless the Lord. Do, 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 do. Oh, oh, oh.
Okay, mute is off. We're back. So, yeah, I agree. Pretty dysfunctional family in the Herods. This is not uncommon in royalty and throughout the ages. There was a Spanish Austrian dynasty called the Habsburgs. There was so much inbreeding in the Habsburgs that they created a deformity called the Habsburg jaw with a really protruding jaw, like you had a beard out there, but it was a jaw, and the top of the jaw was sunken back in the upper dentures. One of the kings of Spain, Charles something, I don't know, maybe Charles II, one of those Charles in Spain, had such a deformity with his jaw that he had trouble keeping food in his mouth, and that's all from inbreeding and stuff. So yeah, this went on in many dynasties and different stuff. It's pretty sick things. Sorry. And then Revolver, I see you're not feeling well. We're talking about somebody getting chicken soup for you, and I hope you're doing better. This is cool. And yeah, we did miss the rapture again yesterday. I think I've missed about 30 raptures so far. This drives me crazy when people pick dates and set dates. Okay? One, I, of course, hold a position that the rapture is not coming until when Jesus says he's going to gather his saints in Matthew 24, 29, and 31, which is immediately after the tribulation. That's what it says in the text, and I'm just stuck with what it says. But those people that think that's just Jews being gathered and he's going to gather Christians before the tribulation, there's nowhere that it tells you to set a date. And while I don't think the thing that says nobody knows the hour, not even the Son, is talking about the rapture, the people that hold to that position of pre-tribulation rapture believe that passage is about the rapture and not about the day of the Lord. And so they shouldn't be setting dates anyway. But I see this happen all the time. People get all excited and then they go away. And some guys even get away with making multiple predictions of the end of the world or Jesus coming back or the rapture happening, and people still follow them. It's like the false prophets that are wrong 20, 30, 40 times, and then, oh no, but I'm sure he's a prophet of God. Yeah, wrong once, not a prophet of God. 100% accuracy. You want to call yourself a prophet? Show me that kind of accuracy. Otherwise, you're a false prophet. And but yeah, it does happen. So I didn't see any real questions on the lesson, which is cool. Must mean I either did a good job or you guys weren't paying attention. I don't know which one happened, but it's a no. We're good to go. So I'm going to do what I did in my introduction, trying to get out of here. So, like I said, I teach 3 days a week normally, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday, Wednesday, I'll be in a book of the Bible, and then in Matthew until we finish. And then on Fridays, I teach stuff related to Christianity. This Friday, we're going to talk about different theories of the atonement. What happened on the atonement? What does that mean? What is the theories of atonement? Which theories are there any that are controversial? That kind of stuff on Friday. And then I haven't been with Neil for the last couple of weeks because she's doing the David series, and I had some stuff going on where it was going to be hard for me to make her show. Right now, we believe Neil and I are going to get together next Tuesday. That'll be the last Donna Hughes Day for a while, because immediately after that, next week, I'm going hunting. And I'll be gone at least midway through October and maybe longer. Okay? I'll be gone at least 2 weeks. And it's very possibly this could be 3 or 4 weeks. Snow determines when my hunting ends. Okay? When the snow comes, I got to leave. But it's, and we're up there, and sometimes we get a snow early, and it's the first week in October it shows up, and we're out of there pretty quickly. Sometimes it's usually like the second week. Sometimes it goes third or fourth week. And there's a cabin to work on and hunting to do, but there is no internet. So a week from Friday is going to be my last stream for a while. So only next week will I be with Neil. So if you want to catch me when I come back, just whatever platform you're on, DLive, Voxel, Rumble, wherever, just subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. Now the good thing about Voxel and Rumble is I have to post the show early, the notification of the live stream. So if you subscribe on one of those 2 channels and turn on notifications, you get notified when I'm going to be back. But it's definitely going to be a break. But I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I've had withdrawals not being on with Neil and having that fun time over there. If you want to send me any questions, if I miss it for something, and I didn't see your question in the chat, just email me, bill@discerningtruths.com. Yes, you can DM me on all these different platforms I'm on. I will eventually see your message, usually, but email comes right to me, and it's a better way to go. You notice I caught a couple of my own typos. Maybe I didn't catch them all, but I try to catch them when I'm on there. I will fix the slides, and I'll post a PDF of all my notes on Discerning Truth Groups on Telegram. You can download it. Nothing I do behind a paywall. Anybody that wants to support me, I'm happy to accept that, but I will never charge you for anything. You download my PDF, use it for your own Bible study, teach other people, whatever you want to do with it, it's fine with me. Now, my replays are on, like Foxhole has them, but you can't organize them. Rumble allows you to create channels underneath your account. Like underneath Donahue Pop, I have 14 channels. Start here, New Testament books, Old Testament books, theology, those kind of stuff. Freaky Friday channel. On YouTube, they have playlists. And playlists are better than channels, but, it's a takeaway. You go on Discerning Truth 534 on YouTube and like that channel, you like all the playlists. You don't have to do anything else. On Rumble, when you find Donahue Papa's channel, you got to find the New Testament book channel and like it. The Old Testament, you kind of a little bit of a pain, but there are benefits to Rumble, benefits to YouTube. Neither are perfect. I always promote my good friend in California, Michael. Like I said, he's going to be on Praying for the Nation here in 9 minutes. So I want to wrap up. But he teaches the Bible. He's going through Acts right now, and he's about to end. Actually, I think it was in chapter 26 today. So there's only 28 chapters in Acts. He'll end Acts pretty quickly. He's almost to the end on Sunday doing Psalms. I don't know if he's just going to start over or what's going to happen. But Michael's coming up to 2 transition points, finishing Acts and finishing Psalms and doing it. But he teaches 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. Monday to Friday he's in Acts, and then on Sunday him and his wife are in Psalms. You really ought to tune in. It's a great way to start your day with Michael. And I do Michael and Neo in the morning, and we're good. Bill's going demon hunting. I wish, but it's a we just Bill's killed a lot of fur-bearing creatures. I've killed a lot of everything over the years, but I tend to hunt more fur bearers, and it's one of the activities I enjoy. So and it get me out there, and while I can still hike around the mountains, I want to do it. I love being out there and with nature. Yeah, part of what I love about living in Kauai is it is just amazing nature all around you. Some of the most beautiful nature I've ever seen in my life is on this island. And I get to live here. What a blessing to be here. So with that, I'm going to get out of here today. Don't forget, Michael, his Rumble chat really jumps. And then he's got a pretty good crowd on X as well, right? So when we get there. So thank you, and I'm out of here. God bless you.